Yo, what's going on YouTube? It's Sheikah here, back again with another Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity video. Today's going to be another character guide, and if we look at the poll I posted last week, narrowly beating out Sheikah for second place is the final boss of the game, Calamity Ganon. Ganon is unlocked pretty late in the game through a bunch of side quests, and since he is the main villain of the game, he's a pretty powerful character, and he hits really hard. Opening up his attack menu though, here you can see all his attack combos and abilities. Like always, I go over all of these in detail, as well as show you some extra things they don't show you on the screen. So make sure to subscribe if you haven't already, and let's get this video started by looking at his basic abilities. We'll start this section off by looking at both Ganon's dash attacks. His first one is done by sprinting and pressing Y, which will make him stop running and then do a quick double swipe at the enemies in front of him. Ganon's second dash attack is done by sprinting and pressing X. This will make Ganon do 2 spins and then strike all enemies in front of him. His dash attack is pretty strong, but unlike most X dash attacks, it makes Ganon completely stop running afterwards. Instead of having a regular strong attack that damages enemies, when you press X with Ganon, he'll instead raise his fist into the air and spread 4 malice pulls on the ground around him. You can spam this indefinitely, and then after a while the malice will be automatically absorbed by Ganon, and I'll explain this mechanic a little bit further in the unique action section. So like I already kind of mentioned, Ganon's unique action is absorb malice to fill his malice gauge. Then once that is filled, you can press ZR to change into Calamity form, which makes Ganon's attack way more powerful and changes combos at the cost of expanding that malice gauge. Ganon spreads malice either via his ability that we just went over, or through certain attacks in his combos. I'll go over which ones in the combo section. When you first throw out malice pulls, they start off small, but if you leave them on the field for a little while, they'll start to expand, and then once they get big enough, they'll be automatically absorbed as long as you're close by. The bigger the malice pool you absorb, as you can probably guess, will fill up your malice gauge a little bit more, but you can choose to absorb malice a little bit earlier with ZR, but it won't fill up your gauge as much. Also, when you're in Calamity form, every attack will spread malice, so you can absorb it to stay in Calamity form a little bit longer. And finally, in Calamity form, using either your weak point smash or special attack will change you back to normal form, but will retain however much you had left in your malice gauge. Here we have some of Ganon's weak point smash animations. On top of the damage it does, it will also fill up a little bit of Ganon's malice gauge whenever you use it. And to wrap this section off, here is Ganon's special attack. We will change form to create a huge explosion that does huge damage in the area in front of him. And also, likely his weak point smash just has the additional effect of filling up his malice gauge a little bit. Moving on now to our Sheikah Runes, and the first up is Cryonis. For Ganon's Cryonis rune, he'll punch the ground and then raise up 5 spiked Cronus pillars from the ground in front of him. For his bomb rune, Ganon will spawn 5 floating bombs and then punch them at the enemies in a wide area in front of him. For his Magnesis rune, Ganon will spawn 3 metal pillars like the one used in the Thunderblight fight and then slam them into the ground. Then afterwards he'll strike them with lightning, which will damage all enemies within a nearby area. And finally, for Stasis, Ganon's is pretty standard as it'll freeze all nearby enemies, and you can see the range this has by the little bubble that spawns after you use it. And this Stasis has one of the bigger areas of effect when comparing it to the Stasis used by other characters. Alright, so now moving on to his attack combos, and like I mentioned a little bit earlier, when entering his Calamity form by using his unique action, all his attack combos will change. So first I'll show you guys what the combos look like normally, then after I'll show you what it looks like in Calamity form. Alright, so to start things off in his normal form, our first combo is going to be the 6 Ys combo. This combo is pretty standard as it's just a mix of swipes and punches from Ganon. However, in the combo on the 3rd Y press, he'll create 3 malice pulls, and then on the last Y press, he'll create 5 malice pulls around him that you can later absorb. His second combo is going to be his YX combo. In normal form, this will have him do a swipe at his enemies in front of him, and then for the strong attack, he'll create a Malice Eyeball at a pretty good distance in front of him that will damage enemies. I also noticed whenever he uses Malice Eyeball, instead of targeting in front again, it sometimes will spawn directly next to enemies instead. And finally, wherever the Malice Eyeball spawns, it will spawn a Malice Pull right next to it. The third combo is the YYX combo. For the regular attacks, Ganon will then do some swipes at his enemies in front of him, and then for the strong attack, he'll throw at those enemies in the air and release a flurry of punches. Then at the end of the attack, he'll create a small ball of Malice and then punch it forward, doing some extra damage and spawning a Malice Pull wherever that ball lands. Ganon's fourth combo is the YYYX combo. For the Ys, again, you'll do some regular attacks, and then for his strong attack, he'll create a spiked Malice Ball that he'll swing around him, damaging enemies. Like in combo 1, the third Y press hero will spawn 3 Malice Pulls, and the end of the strong attack hero will create 1 Malice Pull at the end. And our final combo in normal form is the fifth combo, which is the 4Ys and X combo. Again, for all the Y presses, you'll do the same regular attacks from combo 1, and then for the strong attack, you'll do a quick double swipe, and then you'll create a wing-looking things from his back and slam them on the ground, which will send beams forward out of him. The third Y press here, with all the others, will create 3 Malice Pulls, but oddly enough, I don't think the strong attack here creates any Malice Pulls at the end. Alright, so moving on to our Calamity form combos now, and all the button inputs for all the combos here are going to be the same. So for combo 1, all of his regular attacks are going to be beefed up and changed a little bit, and then at the end of the combo, he'll shoot a laser out of his face. I didn't mention this earlier, but each of the attacks in Calamity form will spread Malice as well as expose weak point gauges on bosses. Ganon's second combo, Calamity form, will have him do a quick punch and then slam the ground with his fist, creating a small shockwave around him that will damage all nearby enemies. For his YYX combo, Calamity Ganon will do 2 regular attacks, and with the strong attack, he will transform his arm into a cannon like the one Limblight has and shoot a beam causing an explosion in front of him. Ganon's fourth combo, Calamity form, will have him do 3 regular attacks for the Y presses, and then for the strong attack, he'll create some wing-looking things out of his back again, and then jump forward and slamming them into the ground, creating a pretty big shockwave around him as well as sending those same beams forward. And then lastly, for his fifth combo in Calamity form, Ganon will do his usual regular attacks, and then for the strong attack, he'll transform into that floating pig head thing that will move forward and damage all enemies in his path. Alright, so now it's time for the final section of the video where we'll go over some basic strategies and tips for playing against Calamity Ganon. We'll start this section off like always by going over my weapon build for him, and my plan here is to use all attack speeds on him since his normal attack speed is really slow. These attack speed seals make Ganon way faster and easier to play in my opinion, since he can get off combos way faster and in turn create Malice Pulls more frequently so he can transform to Calamity form even more often. However, these attack seals don't match any of his hidden seals, so he'll be only getting a plus 15 boost from this combination. If you want the plus 20 boost to his weapon, my recommendation is use 1 strong attack damage and 3 damage per 100 KOs to make him hit super hard. However, this build doesn't really address his super slow attack speed, so I kind of prefer the other builds a little bit more. For some basic strategies, one tip I do have is to always fill his mouse gauge before taking on any bosses, especially the more difficult ones like Hinoxes, Guardians, or Lynels. You can easily do this by using the spread mouse ability by pressing X, and although it does take a little bit of time, it's really worth it since Ganon's attacks like Calamity form will absolutely shred any boss's weak point gauge, and pretty much guarantee you one weak point smash hit. But if you don't want to do this, another good way to fill up his mouse gauge is by just spamming his combo once, since that will always guarantee you 8 mouse pulls instead of the usual like 1 or 2 that the other strong attacks create. So for taking over outposts though, I really like Ganon's combo 4 since he swings that malice ball all around him that will damage pretty much the entire outpost. Combo 2 is also pretty solid at this as well, since that little malice eye will pretty much target all nearby enemies and suck them in, doing damage to all of them. To a certain extent, I also like combo 3 for this as well, but I also believe that one's pretty good at taking on bosses as well. And lastly, I like combos 1 and 5 for taking on bosses. I really like combo 5 especially since that strong attack at the end there will pretty much drain like half of a boss's weak point gauge. Overall though, I think that Ganon is a pretty good character to use. He hits really hard and all of his attacks have pretty good range to them, so he can do a lot of damage, but his attack speed and playstyle is pretty slow. Thankfully though, you can help fix this by just giving him a bunch of attack speed steals. However, one problem I do have with it is that he's really big and chunky, so it's a little bit harder for him to avoid attacks, which will cause him to get knocked out of his combos pretty frequently, which can get kind of annoying. I also think his unique action could be a little bit better, as it does take a little too much waiting to be able to use his Calamity form. And although allowing us to use his Calamity form more frequently would be pretty broken, I think it would make sense since he is one of the last characters you unlock as well as the final boss of the game. However, the rest of his basic abilities as well as his attack combos are pretty solid, and Sheikah Runes are probably some of the better ones in the game as well. That's just my opinion on him though. Let me know what you guys think about Ganon in the comment section below. Also, feel free to share any strategies you have for playing him, or let me know if there's anything in his moveset I may have missed. But that's going to wrap up the video for today. That was the entire moveset for Calamity Ganon. Next up, we'll probably take up a look at Mr. Monk, and then afterwards we'll probably wrap up the last of the character guides by taking a look at the Great Fairies, so make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any of those. Other than that though, make sure you guys like the video if you enjoyed it and found it helpful. I'd like to thank every one of you for watching, and I'll see you guys later. Peace out.